Today I'm going to be talking about the social penetration theory. So what exactly is the social penetration theory? It was developed in 1973 by psychologists Irwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor. It states that human personality and behavior is based upon how intimate the individual's relationship is. According to the International Encyclopedia of Interpersonal Communication, self-disclosure describes the process of bonding that moves a relationship from superficial to more intimate. What this means is the rather mundane act of meeting and communicating with someone new can turn into something much more intimate through sharing personal information mutually. This applies to all relationships, even online ones. The article, A Comparison of Offline and Online Friendship, Qualities at Different Stages of Relationship Development, states that, quote, offline friendships involve more interdependence, breadth, depth, code change, understanding, commitment, and network convergence than online friendships. The difference between the two friendships diminished over time, end quote. This means that by way of online chat rooms, video messaging, and apps like Skype and Snapchat make it easier for online friends to communicate without ever having to meet face-to-face. Now, let's focus on self-disclosure in a bit more detail. According to Nicole Allensworth, author of Social Penetration, A Description, Research, and Evaluation, Altman and Taylor, quote, developed a unified theory which provided a stable base from which researchers could study, end quote. Essentially, self-disclosure is all about how the more information you share with another person, the more intimate the relationship will become. Self-disclosure with other individuals is essential to human relations. The website communicationstudies.com illustrates that, quote, relationships begin and deepen through self-disclosure, end quote. This further implies that deep relationships cannot form unless each individual involved trusts the other with the information being disclosed. Another interesting fact about self-disclosure comes from an article entitled The Personal Impact of Ethical Decisions, a Social Penetration Theory, explaining, quote, when a person receives positive reinforcement from interaction with another individual, over time he or she will disclose more about themselves. This brings us to the onion metaphor, developed by Altman and Taylor. This image depicts the different layers of the human personality that can be expressed through disclosure. It moves inward through layers, the outside layer representing the most basic information one could know about someone, going inward toward the most intimate things that most people don't disclose. Let's move on to the specific layers of the onion model. This superficial layer represents all of the shallow information such as likes and dislikes. The middle layers are made up of information such as political views and opinions on social issues. Moving into the inner layers means disclosing fears, values, hopes, and potential goals. Lastly, at the core, you'll find people sharing the most private information about themselves. That brings us to the difference between breadth and depth. Breadth is defined by the number of various topics being discussed, whereas depth is the degree of intimacy that topics are being discussed. Two people can discuss many topics, but if they can relate to a topic, such as a love for traveling, they can reach a deeper level of intimacy through that topic. One is possible without the other, and vice versa. However, deep penetration is also possible in relationships. It can work in reverse. An article entitled Self-Disclosure, Intimacy, and the Deep Penetration Process explains the process like this. Quote, decreased intimacy was associated with increased depth. This may be due to the tendency of couples to self-disclose their negative thoughts and feelings, end quote. Finally, I'll give some examples of where social penetration can occur. For example, a college student meeting a classmate for the first time. Their first meeting might be, they might talk about what they like about the class, whether or not they like the professor, and then usually towards the end of the semester, once they've shared more of their personal views, they might have become more intimate. Another example is conversations held at a party, where you could meet a complete stranger and then know everything about their lives by the end of the party. And then also relationships develop with coworkers. I find that when people work with other people towards a similar goal, they usually become very close, based upon the fact that they both want to do well at their job. To conclude, social penetration requires mutual trust from each party and can lead to fantastic friendships and deep relationships. Thank you so much for listening.